This is the international news. This is the international news on Atlantic Television Network. First, the headlines. Sudan, potential famine across Sudanese areas if war escalates. China, country urges U.S. to cease condoning Philippines' provocations. United Kingdom, Keir Starmer to become Britain's next Prime Minister. Bolivia, President Luis Arce denies involvement, knowledge of coup. Sydney, 9 entertainment staff passes motion of no confidence. And now the news in details. There is a realistic chance of famine in 14 areas across Sudan if the war that began in April last year escalates, a global monitor said on Thursday, in a sharply worsening hunger crisis that the World Food Programme called the world's largest. The areas listed by the Integrated Food Security Phase Classification as at risk of famine are those who have seen the heaviest fighting, the capital Khartoum, the regions of Darfur and Kordofan, and El Gezira state. It said the findings marked a stark and rapid deterioration of the food security situation in Sudan since December and the worst levels of hunger observed in the country since the IPC was formed 20 years ago. According to the assessments, the number of people experiencing a hunger crisis rose by 45% to 25.6 million, or more than half of the population, in the lean season lasting to September, when less harvested food is available. Some 8.5 million people, nearly a fifth of the population, face food shortages that could result in acute malnutrition and death or require emergency coping strategies. As previously reported by press, some 756,000 people are projected to be in catastrophe, the most severe level of extreme hunger, up from 0 in December. This disaster is man-made and was preventable. Ahmed Kazilbash, Sudan Country Director for humanitarian group Plan International, said in a statement, "Our time to act was 6 months ago. It is unconscionable that there are now more than 8 million people on the brink of famine." War between Sudan's army and the Rapid Support Forces erupted more than 14 months ago in the capital and quickly spread to other parts of the country. It has triggered ethnically driven violence in the western region of Darfur, caused the world's biggest internal displacement crisis, and split control of the country between the rival camps. China urged the United States on Friday to stop tolerating and supporting provocations by the Philippines after Deputy Secretary of State Kurt Campbell expressed concern about Beijing's destabilizing actions in the South China Sea. China and the Philippines have recently traded accusations over dangerous and illegal maneuvers affecting their respective vessels in the area, second Thomas Shoal, and disputed a toll waterway. The United States should stop condoning and supporting the Philippines' provocations and nuisance and take practical actions to safeguard peace and stability in the South China Sea, said Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Mao Ning. The Philippines has sent missions to resupply soldiers leaving aboard a rusty, aging warship deliberately grounded by Manila in 1999 at the atoll to reinforce its sovereignty claims. At a regular briefing, Mao added that the Philippines had turned its back on a consensus with China, challenging its sovereignty and territorial integrity and insisting on delivering construction materials to the warship. On June 17th, a Philippine sailor was injured after what the Southeast Asian nation's military called intentional high-speed ramming by the Chinese Coast Guard, an assertion China has disputed, saying the actions were lawful. Campbell made the remarks to China's Vice Foreign Minister Ma Zhao on Thursday, the U.S. State Department said. The day before, U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan and his Philippines counterpart, Eduardo Ano, discussed shared concerns over China's dangerous and escalatory actions. The United States reaffirmed its commitment to the Philippines' security, the White House said. China claims almost the entire South China Sea, including portions claimed by Brunei, Indonesia, Malaysia, the Philippines, and Vietnam. South Korea's military on Friday released a video that it said showed a North Korean missile abnormally spiraling early in flight and exploding, a rare publicizing of surveillance footage to dismiss the North's claim of a successful test. Footage filmed by a thermal observation device with South Korean frontline units showed a projectile spiraling out of control on an irregular flight path. South Korea assessed that instability during flight led to the missile explosion, it said in a statement on Friday, calling North Korea's claims of success as deception and exaggerating to cover up the failure. North Korea's state media had said that Pyongyang successfully conducted an important test on Wednesday aimed at developing missiles able to deploy multiple warheads, a claim rejected by South Korea. North Korea's missile administration used the first stage engine of a solid-fuel intermediate-range ballistic missile to test separation and guidance of multiple warheads, according to the North's official news agency. South Korea's military said it had detected signs of missile launch preparations early on Wednesday and was watching as the rocket was launched. In April, Pyongyang said it had tested a new solid-fuel hypersonic missile with part of an intensifying race for the next generation of long-range rockets hard to track and intercept. U.S. spy chief Avril Haines will be in South Korea and meet President Yoon Suk-yeol on Friday amid rising tensions on the Korean peninsula and a recent pact between Moscow and Pyongyang pledging closer military ties, a news report said on Thursday. Haines will meet Yoon and discuss the deepening Russian-North Korea ties and Pyongyang's provocative moves, the Jungang Ilbo daily reported, citing an unnamed national security official. The meeting will be unofficial and there is no plan to make their discussion public, the official was quoted as saying. Yoon's office said it cannot confirm the report. A spokesperson for the U.S. Office of the Director of National Intelligence declined to comment. Nuclear armed North Korea said on Thursday it had successfully tested a missile that can deploy multiple warheads, striking different targets under a goal set by its leader Kim Jong-un to perfect a range of strategic and tactical weapons. On his first visit to North Korea in 24 years, Russian President and Kim signed a mutual defense pact along and Washington and Pyongyang has been supplying arms to Russia to fight Ukraine. Moscow and Pyongyang now start arms transactions. Following the signing of the military pact by Kim and Putin, South Korea said it would review the possibility of supplying arms directly to Ukraine, reversing a position it had maintained despite pressure from Washington and the West. South Korea has emerged as a major arms exporter, aiming to become the world's fourth largest supplier of weapons. Peace in Taiwan Strait benefits the whole world, and the international community believes that without it, there can be neither prosperity nor security, Taiwan President Lai Ching-te said on Friday. China, which views democratically governed Taiwan as its own territory, has ramped up its pressure against Lai, whom it views as a separatist, and staged 2 days of war games around the island after he took office last month. Over the past 4 years, increased its activities in the narrow straits, a major international waterway for trade, and regularly flies warplanes there and operates warships. Speaking to new recruits at an army base in the central Taiwanese city of Taichung, Lai said every drop of their sweat was to protect Taiwan's security. The international community believes these days that peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait is a necessary component for global security and prosperity, he said. No matter whether it is the United States, Japan, South Korea, or the European Union, and the heads of state or primary ministers of many nations, they all agree on this point, opposing any country using force to change the status quo in the Taiwan Strait, Lai added. Efforts are all for the peace and stability of the Taiwan Strait, for Taiwan security and our democratic free system and continued economic development, he said. Peace in the Taiwan Strait benefits peace. Taiwan stages its annual High this year will be as close as possible to actual combat, giving what officials view as the rising threat from China. Over the past week, Taiwan has reported detecting a total of 203 Chinese military aircraft operating nearby, getting as close as 31 nautical miles to the island, according to details provided by Taiwan's defense ministry. China last week threatened to prosecute those deemed die-hard Taiwan independent supporters and execute people in the most serious cases, prompting Taiwan to warn its citizens to avoid the country. Lai has repeatedly offered talks with China but been rebuffed. He rejects Beijing's sovereignty claims and says only Taiwan's people can decide their future. Chinese President Xi Jinping called on Friday for the building of bridges in the global economy as Beijing grapples with economic trade and territorial disputes with neighbors and trading partners. The world's second-largest economy will never leave the road of peace. For the conference to commemorate China's guiding principles for foreign affairs, first formulated 70 years ago. It will also not become a strong state seeking to dominate others, Xi told an audience that included Myanmar's former president, Thein Sein, and Nong Duc Man, the former general secretary of the Vietnamese Communist Party. Facing the history of prosperity or unity or confrontation more than ever before, we need to carry forward the spirit of connotation of the 5 principles of peaceful coexistence, Xi said. These first figured in a 1954 pact struck with regional rival India over their Himalayan border. Even so, Indian officials were absent from the front row of the audience reserved for guests of honor. Since the 1950s, China's ruling Communist Party has gone from not being recognized by the United Nations to boasting the biggest diplomatic footprint in the world and presiding over an $18.6 trillion economy. Beijing now signals to see it as a heavyweight, even as other nations accuse it of economic coercion and unfair competition. After China brokered an unexpected detente between Iran and Saudi Arabia last year, China's top diplomat Wang Yi said the country would continue to play a constructive role in but Beijing's unwillingness to condemn Russia's invasion of Ukraine and its pursuit of a no-limit partnership with Moscow present hurdles to that ambition. They saw China skip a summit on a peace conference in Switzerland this month. China's trade ties with the European Union have also come under strain as the bloc of 27 nations plans to impose additional tariffs on Chinese-made electric vehicles, potentially opening up a new front in the West's tariff war with Beijing, begun with Washington's initial import duties in 2018. The EU accuses China of flooding its markets with cheap EV produced by Chinese automakers that have benefited from heavy state subsidies. Japan and the Philippines' foreign and defense ministers will meet in Manila next month for talks that could include a breakthrough defense pact that would allow their military forces to visit each other's soil. Japanese Foreign Minister Yoko Kamikawa and Defense Minister Minoru Kihara will meet their Philippine counterparts on July 8th for a 2+2 meeting, Manila's foreign ministry said in a statement on Friday. The meeting comes as the Philippines and Japan are negotiating a reciprocal access agreement that would deepen defense cooperation between 2 key allies of the United States and Asia. Japanese lawmaker and former defense minister Itsunori Onodera, who visited Manila this week, along with 2 other lawmakers, said he hopes an RAA pact will make rapid progress during the high-level talks next month. I hope the RAA will be ratified, Onodera told a briefing. The Philippines has been ramping up its ties with neighbors and other countries to counter what it describes as China's growing aggression in the South China Sea. Japan and China, on the other hand, have faced off in the East China Sea in tiny, uninhabited islands that Beijing calls the Diaoyu and Tokyo calls the Senkaku. I believe the Philippines and Japan have something in common, Onodera said, referring to their clashes with China in disputed waters. We oppose any attempts to unilaterally change the status quo, Onodera said. In February 2023, Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. and Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida agreed in Tokyo that their militaries would cooperate on disaster relief, a deal that paved the way for RAA negotiations with Japan. Heavy rainfalls and winds brought down a roof at the main airport in New Delhi on Friday, killing one person and disrupting flights from a domestic terminal, while flooded streets and traffic snarls threw daily life out of gear in India's capital. The airport area received about 148.5 millimeters of rain over 3 hours in the early morning, more than the average for all of June, according to India's weather office. Experts blame climate change for extreme heat followed by heavy rain. The city of 20 million people who faced searing heat waves earlier this month received 228.1 millimeter of rainfall as its main Safdurjung weather station in the 24 hours ending 8:30 a.m. on Friday on a 226% departure from normal. A portion of the canopy and supporting beam at the departure area of Terminal 1 collapsed and flight operations were shut down until 2 p.m. India's aviation minister told reporters. The entire Terminal 1 of 3 at the country's biggest and busiest airport was evacuated and an inquiry ordered into the collapse, said the minister Kinjarapu Ramohan Naidu. Rescue work had been completed and 8 injured people were taken to hospital. Atul Garg, the director of Delhi Fire Service, said at least 8 flights were cancelled and 47 were delayed, while departures from Delhi airport were running late by an average of 40 minutes, according to data from flight tracking platform Flight Radar 24. Arrivals and departures of flights scheduled from Terminal 1 after 2 p.m. were diverted through the 2 other terminals, Naidu said, adding their passengers would receive full refunds or have the option of booking an alternate flight and routes. Demand for beer in India is at a multi-year high and air conditioner sales are skyrocketing as the intense, unprecedented heat scorching parts of the country becomes a boon for some consumer businesses. Temperatures in the Indian capital Delhi and the western state of Rajasthan soared to almost 50 degrees Celsius in recent weeks, with scientists saying this hot summer has become even more intense due to human-driven climate change. While rains lashed Delhi on Friday, many northern areas such as Punjab recorded temperatures above 40 degrees Celsius on Thursday. Beer sales volume are expected to jump 10% this summer, and demand is at its highest since the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, said Vinod Giri of Brewers Association of India, which represents leading beer makers Carlsberg, Anheuser-Busch InBev, and United Breweries. Beer in this scorching heat, Giri said, makes Indians feel better without getting too high on alcohol. The heat has also driven power demand to a record peak as more people seek ways to cool down. B. Thiagarajan, managing director at AC's to air purifier maker Blue Star, said he has not witnessed such strong sales for air conditioners in the more than 30 years he has worked in the industry. It's been a mad rush. Anything called air conditioner would have got sold, he said. The number of affluent people in India is rising rapidly, and Thiagaran said overall air conditioner sales will grow 50% in the April-June summer months, outstripping the industry's expected demand increase of 25 to 30%. Other businesses are also enjoying a strong summer. Quick delivery service Swiggy Instamart said it is seeing a sharp rise in orders for ice cream and cold beverages. Walmart earned Indian e-commerce website Flipkart said demand for top-end sunscreen products jumped 40% between February-May 2024 versus the previous year, with products such as sunscreen sticks proving particularly popular. Heat waves made me use sunscreens very frequently, like 3 to 4 times a day, said S. Danish, 27, whose job demands him to stay out in the sun during the day. But even as the heat pushes up demand for some online products, it is still causing logistical challenges as more delivery workers fall ill due to the high temperatures, said A.J. Rao, CEO of Amiza, a logistic company which counts Flipkart and Mama Earth among its customers. People are not able to actually cope with the temperatures outside, he said. Iranians started voting on Friday for a new president following the death of Ibrahim Raisi in a helicopter crash, choosing from a tightly controlled group of 4 candidates loyal to the supreme leader at a time of growing public frustration. State television showed queues inside polling stations in several cities. More than 61 million Iranians are eligible to vote. Polls were due to close at 6 p.m., but are usually extended as late as midnight. The election coincides with escalating regional tensions due to war between Israel and Iranian allies Hamas in Gaza and Hezbollah in Lebanon, as well as increased Western pressure on Iran over its fast-advancing nuclear program. While the election is unlikely to bring a major shift in the Islamic Republic's policies, its outcome could influence the succession to Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, Iran's 85-year-old supreme leader in power since 1989. Khamenei called for a high turnout to offset a legitimacy crisis fueled by public discontent over economic hardship and curbs on political and social freedom. The durability, strength, dignity, and reputation of the Islamic Republic depend on the presence of people, Khamenei told state television after casting his vote. High turnout is a definite necessity. Voter turnout has plunged over the past 4 years as a mostly youthful population chafes at political and social curbs. Manual counting of ballots means it is expected to be 2 days before the final result is announced though initial figures may come out around midday on Saturday. If no candidate wins at least 50% plus 1 vote from all ballots cast, including blank votes, a runoff round between the 2 top candidates is held on first Friday after the election result is declared. 3 candidates are hardliners, and 1 is a low-profile comparative moderate backed by the reformist faction that has largely been sidelined in Iran in recent years. Critics of Iran's clerical rule say the low and declining turnout of recent elections show the system's legitimacy has eroded. Just 48% of voters participated in the 2021 election that brought Raisi to power, and turnout hit a record low of 41% in a parliamentary election 3 months ago. The next president is not expected to usher in any major policy shift on Iran's nuclear program or support for militia groups across the Middle East, since Khamenei calls all the shots on top state matters. You are watching the international news on Atlantic Television Network. We return after this break.
From the line across the ocean to the land beyond the mountains, through the Sahara, we bring honest pop news, live analysis, expert discussions on trending stories in politics, business, socio-economy, sports, and documentaries. So catch all the updates on the happenings around the globe. Stay focused on the fact today, only on ATN.
Every day our lives are changed by history.
We are one people, all of us.
Leaders, politics,
Nobody's ambition is what's the blood.
I have fought a very family.
natural occurrence, war, and the world economy.
I belong to everybody and I belong to nobody.
ATN covers it all on ATN Politics today.
People into the country illegally. That is amazing.
Honourable
You human trafficker.
Honourable they are not picking our calls. They made up their minds.
So no agreement with the EU, but
From the line across the ocean to the land beyond the mountains, through the Sahara, we bring on-spot news, live analysis, expert discussions on trending stories in politics, business, socio-economy, sports, and documentaries. So catch all the updates on the happenings around the globe. Stay focused on the fact today. Only on ATN.
Every day our lives are changed by history.
We are one people, all of us.
Leaders, politics,
Nobody's ambition is what's the blood.
I have fought a very family.
natural occurrence, war, and the world economy.
everybody and I belong to nobody.
ATN covers it all on ATN Politics today.
People into the country illegally. That is amazing. You human trafficker.
Honorable they are not picking our calls. They made up their minds.
So no agreement with the EU, but
from the line across the ocean to the land beyond the mountains, through the Sahara, we bring on sport news, live analysis, expert discussions on trending stories in politics, business. So catch on the globe day only on.
Welcome back. This is the International News on Atlantic Television Network. Now the rest of our stories. Satellite images showing much of the Lebanese village of Aita al-Shab in ruins after months of Israeli airstrikes offer a glimpse of the scale of damage in one of Hezbollah's main bastions in South Lebanon. The images from private satellite operator Planet Labs PBC, taken on June 5th and analyzed, showed at least 64 sites destroyed in Aita al-Shab. Several of the sites contain more than one building. Located in southern Lebanon, where Hezbollah enjoys strong backing from many Shiite Muslims, Aita al-Shab was a front line in 2006 when its fighters successfully repelled Israeli attacks during the full-scale 34-day war. While the current fighting between Israel and the Iran-backed Shiite Islamic movement is still relatively contained, it marks their worst confrontation in 18 years. With widespread damage to buildings and farmland in South Lebanon and northern Israel. The sites have been trading fire since the Gaza war erupted in October. The hostilities have largely depopulated the border zone on both sides, with tens of thousands of people fleeing their homes. The destruction in Aita al-Shab is comparable to the damage done in 2006. 1,000 people familiar with the damage said at a time when escalation has prompted growing concern of another all-out war between the heavily armed adversaries. Israel says fire from Lebanon has killed 18 soldiers and 10 civilians. Israeli attacks have killed more than 300 Hezbollah fighters and 87 civilians, according to tallies. At least 10 of Hezbollah's dead came from Aita al-Shab and dozens more from the surrounding area, according to Hezbollah death notices reviewed. 6 civilians have been killed in the village, a security source said. Russian Defense Minister Andrei Belousov has ordered the Army General Staff to come up with proposals on how to promptly deal with provocations by U.S. strategic drones operating over the Black Sea, the Defense Ministry said on Friday. The ministry said in a statement that it had noted increased activity in the area from U.S. drones, which it said were carrying out reconnaissance and gathering targeting information for high-precision Western weapons used by Ukraine to strike Russian facilities. This demonstrates the increasing involvement of the United States and NATO countries in the conflict in Ukraine on the side of the Kyiv regime, the Defense Ministry said. Such flights multiply the likelihood of airspace incidents with Russian aircraft, which increases the risk of a direct confrontation between the NATO alliance and the Russian Federation. It said that NATO countries would be responsible for any such incidents. The statement did not mention Crimea, the Black Sea region, which Moscow annexed from Ukraine in 2014, but Russian military facilities in Crimea have been repeatedly targeted by Ukrainian forces, including with Western missiles. The Kremlin said on Friday that the outlook for EU-Russia ties was bad after EU leaders nominated Ursula von der Leyen for another term as European Commission President and picked Estonia's Kaja Kallas as the next EU foreign policy chief. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov told reporters that the bloc's decision to nominate Germany's von der Leyen for a second five-year term would not change anything. Mrs. von der Leyen is not in favor of normalizing relations between the EU and Russia. That is how we know her, that is how we remember her. Nothing changes in this respect, said Peskov. Though sometimes riven by divisions, the EU has mobilized to try to help Kyiv against Russia financially and militarily since President Vladimir Putin sent tens of thousands of troops into Ukraine in 2022. Brussels has also imposed multiple packages of sanctions on Moscow to try to force it to withdraw its forces. Commenting on the choice of Estonian Prime Minister Kaja Kallas for EU foreign policy chief, Peskov said she was known for her anti-Russian rhetoric. Mrs. Kallas has not demonstrated any diplomatic inclinations so far either, and is well known in our country for her absolutely intransigent and sometimes even openly anti-Russian statements, he said. Therefore, we do not think that European diplomacy will contribute in any way to the normalization of relations. The prospects in terms of relations between Moscow and Brussels are bad. An opinion poll published in the newspaper Les Echos on Friday showed that French far-right party National Rally might win as much as 37% of the popular vote 2 days before the first voting round in parliamentary elections. RN was up 2 percentage points from the last publication of the poll compiled by Opinionway a week ago, while Macron's centrist bloc together was seen reaching 20% of the popular vote, down 2 percentage points from the previous forecast. The new Popular Front left-wing alliance was seen reaching 28% of the vote, a level unchanged compared with a week ago. Opinionway made no seat projections for France's next National Assembly, which could differ significantly from the measured popular vote due to the two-round majority voting system. BFM TV, in a different poll compiled by Alabe, said RN could potentially cross the 289-seat mark for an absolute majority, placing the party and its allies in the range of 260 to 295 seats. The risk premium on French government bonds rose to its widest since the 2012 Eurozone crisis, ahead of the first round of voting in France, as traders also kept a wary eye on U.S. inflation. On the stock market, France's CAC 40 was the only major European blue chip in the red, losing 0.48% at 9:05 GMT, compared with a gain of 0.25% for the FTSE Euronext 300. The final outcome will be known after a second round of voting on July 7th, and is hard to predict at the current stage, as it will largely depend on to what extent RN's rivals will team up and withdraw own runoff candidates to block the far right. Prime Minister Gabriel Attal on Thursday accused RN leader Jordan Bardella of tolerating racist speech in the ranks of his far-right camp amid a heated last television debate before the vote, an accusation Bardella rejected. Keir Starmer, leader of the opposition Labour Party and favourite to become Britain's next Prime Minister, said on Friday he would quit if his party failed to win the country's July 4th election. Asked during a BBC phone-in programme whether he would resign if Labour lost or lost heavily, Starmer said yes. Labour is around 20 percentage points ahead in most opinion polls and forecast to comfortably win enough parliamentary seats to form the next government, ending Prime Minister Rishi Sunak's tenure and 14 years of Conservative government. Thousands of HSBC customers in Britain were unable to access online banking services on Friday as the bank acknowledged an outage affecting some users of its website and banking app. "We are really sorry that some customers are having issues accessing personal, online and mobile banking," the lender said on social media platform X without giving a reason for the outage. More than 7,000 customers had complained of problems as of 0846 GMT, according to website Down Detector, which tracks such outages. Customers reported being unable to access their money and pay bills, according to Post on X. Disruption of online banking services has been a persistent problem for banks in Britain in recent years, and an acute one because lenders have increasingly encouraged customers to bank online to reduce fixed costs, such as bank branches. Britain's Princess Anne, King Charles' younger sister, has been discharged from the hospital, Buckingham Palace said on Friday, after a 5-night stay due to a minor head injury believed to have been caused by a horse. The palace said that the 73-year-old, the only daughter of the late Queen Elizabeth, had returned home to Gatcombe Park in southwest England and would be recuperated there and return to public duty when her medical team allow. "I would like to extend my warmest thanks to all the team at Southmead Hospital for their care, expertise and kindness during my wife's short stay," her husband Tim Lawrence said. Anne was hurt on Sunday while she was out walking in the grounds of her estate. There were horses in the vicinity at the time of the incident, and her medical team said the head injuries were consistent with impact from a horse's head or legs. A royal source said Anne, a former Olympic equestrian, had suffered a concussion and had been unable to recall what happened. The palace had said on Monday that she was expected to make a full recovery from the injury. However, her upcoming engagements have been postponed, and the injury meant Anne did not fly to Canada as planned this week. Bolivian President Luis Arce on Thursday denied any involvement of prior knowledge or of a failed coup attempt led by the country's former top military commander, who alleged the president had asked him to do something to boost his popularity. "We were never informed about his intentions," Arce told reporters during a press conference at government headquarters. "We were surprised. The mobilization of military units on Wednesday saw Juan José Zuniga gather troops in the main square of capital La Paz, ramming a palace door with an armored vehicle to allow soldiers to rush into the building." Zuniga, who was soon arrested, told reporters that Arce had asked him to help boost popularity. Local news agency Files reported Zuniga told police Arce that had 3 days earlier authorized him to mobilize the armored vehicles with the objective of controlling the situation of conflicts in the country. Earlier on Thursday, Interior Minister Eduardo Del Castillo said in an interview that Arce had received reports of destabilization attempts, though the government did not know more at the time. Arce said Zuniga acted on his own accord, and upon learning of what was happening, the leader called ex-President Evo Morales, his former ally turned political rival, to warn him. "It was clear that they were coming for me," Arce said, "and after they were going for Evo Morales." Zuniga was arrested along with former Navy Commander Juan Arnes Salvador Del Castillo said. He later said 17 people had been detained so far, but there were many more who had participated. The failed coup happened over just a few hours and provoked swift condemnations from world leaders, raising fears that democracy in the Andean nation remains at risk. Arthur quickly swore in new military chiefs on Thursday evening, sought to reassure the public, saying everything had returned to normal. Street stall seller Antonia, who witnessed Wednesday's events in the plaza near where she works, said the area had been calm on Thursday. U.S. President Joe Biden and his Republican rival Donald Trump both took credit for what they said was a strong economy under their watch and blamed the other for punishing inflation as they battled on the debate stage before the November 5th election. He has done a poor job and inflation is killing our country. It is absolutely killing us, said Trump, who was president from 2017 to 2021. Under his own watch, Trump said everything was rocking good. Biden pinned inflation, which peaked at 9% 2 years ago and has since dropped to 3.25% on Trump's handling of the COVID-19 pandemic, along with corporate greed. The economy collapsed under Trump, Biden said, and when he came into office, what we had to do is try to put things back together again. Massive disruptions from the COVID-19 pandemic, which began in March 2020, make comparing the economic records of the two rivals difficult. But one thing is certain, inflation has been far higher under Biden than it was under Trump. There was not a single month under Trump in which consumer price inflation exceeded 3%, and for most of that time, the Federal Reserve, whose job it is to maintain stable prices, worried that inflation was too low. Under Biden, inflation has been above 3% for all but his first 3 months in office and was above 5% for more than half his term so far. The damage from higher prices has been significant. Even though wages have risen, the bigger weekly paychecks American workers take home by less than they did when Biden came into office in 2021. When inflation first began to take off in the spring of 2021, most analysts and policymakers at the Fed thought it would be transitory, but by late 2021, almost nobody thought so. The Fed, in response, increased borrowing costs aggressively to bring down inflation, and prices are now no longer rising as fast as they were. Despite higher interest rates usually expected to cool economic growth, the labor market has been tight, with the unemployment rate at or below 4% for the last 2 years, the longest such run since the 1960s, as inflation has fallen. Average wage growth in the U.S. has exceeded inflation for more than a year now, with lower income workers such as those in the leisure and hospitality sectors among those whose real wages have risen the most. Staff at Nine Entertainment passed a motion of no confidence in Chief Executive Mike Sneesby on Friday afternoon and are preparing to take industrial action after Sneesby announced that 200 jobs would be cut from the company. Sneesby told staff he is cutting 200 jobs due to the economic headwinds facing the media, with up to 90 positions to go on legacy masthead, the Sydney Morning Herald, The Age and the Australian Financial Review. The company said some much-loved colleagues would be leaving the business and tough decisions would be made by mid-July to save $30 million. Today we will announce measures in our publishing business to offset the loss of revenue from Meta deal and challenges in the advertising market, Sneesby said. Unfortunately, this will result in some of our colleagues leaving us in the coming months. In March, Meta, which owns Facebook and Instagram, informed publishers that it would not enter new multi-million-dollar deals for content when contracts expire this year. Internal messages further identified between 70 and 90 jobs would go from the publishing division, which houses the newspaper once owned by Fairfax, company-wide across Nine Television, Nine Radio, streaming service, Stan, and the digital division, Nine.com.au. The headcount is 5,000. Any cuts to editorial will result in a less informed Australian public, said Michelle Ray, acting director of the Media, Entertainment and Arts Alliance. The MEAA said the cuts at Nine added to a horror month for Australian journalism. Nine staff on Friday authorised their union to immediately prepare for a vote on whether to take a protected action. Earlier in the week, Seven West Media announced a restructure that would see up to 150 jobs lost When earlier News Corps Australia restructured and began cutting roles. It is not something we want to do, but it is something we need to do to continue to build on a successful platform of high-quality journalism and digital subscription growth, Sneesby said. The managing director of Nine Publishing, Tori Maguire, told journalists it was the first time since 2017 there had been a reduction in headcount in editorial. The biggest cuts to the papers came in 2012 when what was then known as Fairfax Media slashed 1,900 jobs, shut its main printing plant, and took the SMH and the Age tabloids to prepare for a digital future. But 12 years on, Maguire says more needs to be done to evolve the operating model to create a sustainable future for the math seeds. In light of this, the publishing division is going to have to make significant savings in FY25 right across the business, she told journalists. And that's the international news for today. Before we go, another look at the major stories. From China, country urges U.S. to cease condoning Philippines' provocations. United Kingdom, Keir Starmer to become Britain's next Prime Minister. Bolivia, President Luis Arce denies involvement, knowledge of coup. Sydney, Nine Entertainment staff passes motion of no confidence. I am Valentina Lawrence. Thank you for watching. You can follow us on all our social media platforms on X, Atlantic TV Net, Facebook and YouTube, Atlantic Television Network, Instagram and TikTok, Atlantic TV Network 1, or you can watch it live on our website, atlanticnetwork.tv, or download our app and Play Store, ATN Live. Do remember that peace and unity are the pathways to progress. Do not go nowhere. Business news comes up next.
ATN.
Every day, our lives are changed by history.
We are one people, all of us.
Leaders, politics,
Nobody's ambition is what they blood.
I have fought a very family.
natural occurrence.